guys, this is Claudio Giuliano here, and today I'm excited to bring you the full review of the Wacom Mobile Studio Pro. So today we're going to break down the Wacom Mobile Studio Pro, of course, from the standpoint of the creative professional, and of course the Mobile Studio Pro being a tool specifically made for creators. So we're going to break down the things I like about it. We're going to break down some of its shortcomings. And we're going to go as deep as possible so you guys can gain as much knowledge as you can about the experience. We'll, of course, talk about who I think it's for and the various use cases for it. So let's get into it. So as usual, let's start with our hardware, see what we have going on here. So we're looking at the front of the device here. Of course, we have our express keys here. We have 6 express keys here. We have our touch ring here, as well as a dedicated Windows button there in the center. We have the etched glass display. So we have a new glass that's being used here, which is actually really nice. We'll talk about the actual display in depth when we turn the device on. As far as the build goes, you have Wacom's common softer touch material here, but the majority of the device is metal. It's aluminum. Now when we come around the device here, we have our power button here. You're going to have to hold that power button for about 4 seconds until it turns on. This is good though, because this is so it won't accidentally be turned on when it's in your bag. You have your volume rocker down here. You have a switch that can lock rotation. You have your 3.5 millimeter headphone jack here, and your fully loading SD card slot. Now I want to mention this is the Core i5, the 128 gigabyte model. Okay, so this is the Core i5, 128 gigs. They all have the Iris Pro graphics, not Iris Pro, they have the Iris 550 graphics within it. Now as you see, I have the pen in the little holder that comes with it, this little plastic clip, kind of reminiscent of that Vaio Z Canvas clip that Vaio includes with the Canvas. A little bit different though, but I really actually enjoy this. This is a really useful thing for working and for setting the pen down. So I enjoy this. This is a great thing. And then, of course, we have our camera here, our front-facing camera, so you can video conference. Okay, and then that's the Kensington lock, which is where that little plastic holder will come, and that's where you will plug that plastic holder into. And that's really it. You get your 3 USB-C ports. Now, coming over to the back of the machine, you have these rubber grips, which are kind of cool for when you want to grab it and hold it. It's heavy, so it's about 2.90 pounds. So almost about 3 pounds here in terms of the weight. So you're not going to be holding it in your hand that much. But you do get these grips, and then of course if you're going to lay it flat, you have these rubber stoppers here. And this is also where your fan ventilation is found within that. So that's where the fan and any of the heat that the fans are sucking out of the machine will come from that area there. Okay, and that's really it. And then of course you have your back camera here. Now the i5 128 model has just a regular standard camera. It doesn't have the 3D camera within it. Okay, and then you have these slots here, which of course will be for that stand, which we hope Wacom comes out with as soon as possible. And there's also screws in there, and I have no idea if these are for some type of mounting system or if they have to do with the stand. I'm really not sure. I guess we'll find out later when that stand comes out. And then of course you have more ventilation here, back here on the machine. Okay, and that's really it. As far as the thickness goes, I mean, it's thick, but not, it's not like, it looks a lot thicker in the photos. The 128, the i5s and the i7s, the standard ones, they're thinner than what you might think. So, not the thinnest, but not too bad. And then it comes to this kind of wedge design. So overall, Wacom did a really beautiful job on the design here. It's a really, really well done, solid machine. Solid design. Like when you feel this thing, it just feels like a tank. It's just really well done. In my opinion, and I was someone who did own the Cintiq Companion, this doesn't really even feel like it's part of the same product family. And that's probably why Wacom named it the Mobile Studio Pro. It feels very different than the Cintiq Companion in all better ways. So as far as the hardware goes, you have a really beautiful machine here, really nicely built. And that's going to wrap up our hardware. So I've backed the lights down because we're going to turn the machine on. And I want to point out the first drawback of the machine, and that's the amount of light leak it has. It has a lot of light leak, and if this, it doesn't, it's not going to hinder your work, I guess. In some cases it could, which I'll show you, but it has a lot of light leak, and it's one of the drawbacks because you're spending a lot of money on this machine with the tax and everything. This came to a bit over $2,000. Okay, and this is one of the lower end machines, and for me, a little amount of light leak for me is no problem. It's not even something I'd think about normally, but the amount of light leak here is a little bit concerning to me because that concerns me with the longevity of the display with the light leaking into the center. Okay, you see all that light leak? That's a lot of light leak. And as you see, we're bleeding into areas where we would be working, and that concerns me. Of course, when that starts up there, give me 1 second while I put this passcode in. Okay. When that starts up there, it's bumping the brightness up. But if you are, if you work on, dark images and dark paintings and dark pieces, that light leak is going to show up. And of course, depending on your lighting situation, you're going to have to eventually bump up your brightness. So when you have that brightness bumped up to even say something like 75%, you start to see that light leak bleed through. And then, so this is just like a, this is just a, if we were working on a dark black background, this light leak would bleed through into your working scenario. Now, what worries me with it is if it's going to bleed further in and keep bleeding as time goes on, because we're dealing with a tablet form factor, and when we're talking about the Creative Professional and the software we use, a lot of those softwares can start to make the fans kick on and start to make the processor really run and do what it's supposed to do, and that creates heat. So my worry is that as you work, my worry is that the light leak can get worse. So that is one of my concerns. That's one of the drawbacks. And if it's something that you can deal with, then it's not a problem. But I did feel like it was important to point out because I have another machine here which has the same exact kind of light leak. So I actually thought it was a defect, and I got another machine. So this is the second one. This was the RMA that they sent me, and this had pretty much the same amount of light leak as the other one. So just something that I needed to point out first, so you guys know, the light leak is there, and maybe some have less light leak than others, and maybe others have more. But I wanted to point that out because I feel that that can be a concern. But if we put that aside, what we have here is a beautiful display, one of the best out there. Okay, this display is 2560 by 1440, so we're getting that pretty much a QHD resolution. You're not going to see pixels, but the big thing here is, of course, that 96% Adobe RGB coverage. So we get a vibrant display here with the wide color gamut, and this is, of course, what a creator wants. You want a display like this because you don't have to go in and calibrate in most cases. You can go straight to print with very accurate color representation. So not only is it beautiful to look at, to work on, but then when you're going to print, because for me, if you guys have been following along for a while, you know that all of my end designs wind up for something in terms of print. So for me, this is the perfect display. For me, this kind of display covering the wide gamut, and that allows you to just not really have to worry about color. You don't have to. You go in, you work, you get to see your art in such a vibrant way, and then of course when you print it, you have that accuracy. So it's a beautiful display despite the light leak. Okay, let's get into performance. So I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm a bit disappointed. Actually, I'm pretty disappointed. Let me show you performance. So we have a small document open here. This is a 10 by 10, 300 dpi. And you know, like the first day I started testing, it didn't seem like we were going to see performance like this, and then it kind of, it kind of waned really quickly. So we are plugged in right now, and we have one of the brushes that, of course, you would want to use because you'd want to take advantage of Wacom's tilt technologies and rotation, and that, you know, that's what makes this kind of brush, you know, do what it does, and get the effect that it gets. So again, this is a 10-inch document, which is not big. Let me show you what happens. As you can see, we lag, and then as it tries to process that, you actually can hear the fans kick up as it tries to process that. So what I've seen throughout Photoshop is, you know, with special brushes and things like that, it doesn't do well. It doesn't perform well. Now, if we unplug, it'll slow down even more. And you know, as you can see, we're getting that lag. So again, we're at a small size here, okay? And let me back the brush's size down because I just want to show you that the brush size is not making a difference here either. So throughout Photoshop in my tests, I can't say that I can't say that we have the best performance here. Some of the brushes will do better than others. Now, you know, these brushes do commonly lag in on many systems. But, you know, a bit disappointing here. And you know, some of them don't lag because some of them aren't doing too much, but as you keep going, they do wind up pretty much all lagging in some way, shape, or form. And that's kind of a bummer. That was one of the drawbacks, one of the bummers for me to see. Now, I don't use Photoshop for illustration, but I know a lot of you guys do. So that, you know, that's something surely to keep in mind. especially if you use brushes of this nature, something to keep in mind. Now, of course, this goes into power modes, and I want to bump the performance to the max. Okay. So we're in maximum performance there on our iris. Let's go into high performance in Windows because that also bumps the speed. Let's see what happens. So we do see a little bit of an increase there in the performance, but we still have that lag. We still have that lag there. So the lag is still there. Of course, on regular round brushes and things like that, brushes like this, you're not going to see the lag there, but I know a lot of you guys take advantage of those more complex brushes there. And this is maxed out, totally maxed out in high power modes, and we see that performance. So that's one of the drawbacks there in Photoshop, and that's some of the performance there. So it's like, you don't get to really take advantage of your tilt and all the cool features that you would want to, because of the performance we see here. Now, let's pop into Clip Studio Paint, because of course I know a lot of you guys use Clip Studio Paint, and I do as well. And then we're going to go into PaintStorm, which is my main software. So let's go 20 by 20, 300 DPI. If you're inking, now of course, and then let's also talk about the pen, because the pen is awesome. As if you watch the Intuos Pro review, the Pro Pen 2 is awesome in every way. Such a major improvement over past iterations. Great initial activation force. So many pressure levels. It's great. And as you can see in Clip Studio Paint with inking, we're not really going to run into lag issues. So if you ink, if you're a comic artist and you work in line, you're not going to see too much of performance issues here. But if you also paint, this is where things get weird again. So we're plugged in right now. Okay, now and here's the thing. It goes back to battery life too, because when you're on the battery, you really want to be in the balanced mode, because if you're in max power on battery life, that's going to start killing the battery life faster than it already drains, and it drains fast as it is. Let's unplug. So as you see, when we unplug, we get that lag in Clip Studio Paint as well. And the only way to not get this lag here, if we want to paint in Clip Studio Paint, the only way to get this to not get this lag is to either really bump up the spacing on the brush, which takes away what makes this brush what it is, and then, or the other way, and that is to go here, go into maximum performance mode on your iris, and then go into max performance mode in Windows. Okay, we were in high performance mode in Windows, and when you do those two things, you'll see that the lag goes away. Okay. Now, and this will make things warmer, so you'll start feeling heat on the display when you lay your hand down. And then also that'll kick up the fans. So, and still not exactly perfect either, but better than how it was down in balanced mode. So in some instances it'll lag, and of course if you work on the slower side and you paint slow, then you might never notice lag. So something to keep in mind, something to think about. I have PaintStorm open. This is version 2.0 where we have a lot of performance increases and we have a lot of great things going on in terms of performance. We have the ability to clip off the GPU at any time, and we could also control the GPU per brush. And we can turn GPU acceleration completely off if we want to within our settings here. So we can turn that totally off, but we have it on. We have a larger document open. But first, I want to lower the resolution to do some sketching stuff to show you. I want to show you the tilt and show you how this feels here. So let's check this pencil out. So it just feels great. The pen experience and the tilt experience is really well done. As you can see. So the feel on the etched glass, it feels really good. And when you rest your hand down here, it doesn't feel like you're resting your hand on glass. It doesn't feel like you're working on glass. It has a dynamic feel when you're working, and in some instances it could start to feel like kind of like a brush, and then in other instances it can feel like a bit of a pencil. It has a really nice natural feel, and as you can see, we get the subtle gradations here and all that pressure sensitivity as I barely push down here. It just feels very natural. It's very nicely done. And when it comes to the actual core pen technology here with the Pro Pen 2, you know, this is great. This is a beautiful experience when it comes to that. So really nice pen experience here. It's really nicely done, and it makes those other performance setbacks, you know, it makes those more of a bummer, knowing just how good this pen is. Let's bump this resolution up. Let's see what happens in PaintStorm when we paint. Now PaintStorm is unique because one of its mantras is you can paint with these complex brushes and this complex engine, and the brushes have no spacing on them, and as you can see, we're not getting lag here in PaintStorm, and that's partially because of the version 2 giving a lot of improvement, and also in general PaintStorm doesn't really lag much for the most part. So you get good performance here in PaintStorm. The problem is PaintStorm hits the battery, and eventually you will see bog downs just like the other stuff. You'll start to see lag in places like the other things that I showed, but not as much at all. Not as bad, but you know, there is lag there in certain aspects. But the problem is PaintStorm really hits the battery more than other stuff. So Clip Studio Paint does really well on the battery. You know, if you want to get the longest battery life, you know, working in Clip Studio Paint will allow for that. PaintStorm, when you have the GPU on and have acceleration going, it hits the battery life much more than Clip Studio Paint does. because it doesn't really use GPU acceleration as much, and it also hits the battery more than Photoshop, I've noticed. But when you turn the GPU acceleration off, you can extend the battery life to be pretty similar to what you would get with Photoshop. So, it's, there's a give and take thing, but I just wanted to show you guys the performance here in PaintStorm Studio. And let's go into Illustrator. Okay, Adobe Illustrator open. Now, of course, I know a lot of you guys are not buying the Mobile Studio Pro to work in Illustrator, but I know a lot of you guys, use Illustrator like me throughout the process and things, but I would imagine most of you buying the Mobile Studio Pro are using it for painting and illustrating in raster softwares. But, so there's not too much to show here because Illustrator really runs well on a lot of things, on most devices. So if you're working traditionally with your mouse and pen tool, all those things are going to work fluidly and quite easily here. Everything works well. I've tested Illustrator in depth, and then Illustrator doesn't really have great pen support. It's not like a raster software where you're getting that ultimate variation in pen pressure and things like that, but it's much better than the experience you would get with something like an N-trig pen, where it doesn't really pick up when it doesn't work. As you can see, it picks up here. So the pen does work here, and if you do work with the pen in Illustrator, I don't see many issues here in Adobe Illustrator with picking up the pen input. So really quick, just wanted to show you that. Illustrator performance is good. Of course, I have to bring up the fact that Wacom released the product without the stand, and that's a bummer. And I want to show you a few other things that I didn't get to. Of course, you have the pen holder, and I like this presentation. It's nicely done. This is the carry bag that they say that's for it. Not a fan of it, honestly. Not a lot of protection here, and very little pocket space, so you can't fit the charger in here, and plus a keyboard, and you can't fit everything. So I gotta be honest with you, I'm not a fan of the bag, but I mean, it does fit it. I mean, it can work, but it's not giving it ultimate protection, and it also doesn't give you a lot of pocket space. Now, like I said, the stand is not here, so we have to kind of improvise and make our own setup. And what I have going on here is not ideal, but it works, but it's not ideal. So I wound up buying this keyboard from like about 4 years ago, the Wedge keyboard. I don't know if you guys remember this. I bought it because I kind of thought this would help me make it easier to use it as like a daily driver, except the age of this keyboard shows it's heavy, it's thicker than I thought, but and the cover is also very heavy, but the cover doubles as a stand, and that's what I'm using there. You don't get many angle positions, so there's that. So we really need Wacom to get that stand out, because I feel like a huge part of the experience is missing without it. And working flat with this thing is not fun. And working flat in general it's not a good idea to work flat, totally flat. That's when your work starts getting skewed and you don't realize it. But also, it's not comfortable to work with this system flat. I tried it and it feels really weird. So Wacom's got to get that stand out. But this is how I rigged it. Now there's other stands too that work, like this $4 stand, but for the size and weight, not ideal, not ideal. So Wacom does weird things, and one of those weird things is releasing a product without one of the major parts, because as it basically ships with zero ergonomics. There's no ergonomics built in, as far as positioning and things like that. So, and that's a very important part of an art tool. And that's where things like the Vaio Z Canvas win, having that weight-based easel-like stand. Things like the Surface Pro, having its zero gravity hinge, not the zero gravity hinge, but the kickstand, which goes down to any angle. And even the origami stands of the Galaxy Book are better than not having anything at all, and the different foldable positions of the iPad Pro's keyboard cover. So, you know, I wish I had the stand here to talk about, but unfortunately, that don't know when that's coming. Just wanted to point that out to you. Now, as we've been recording this review, of course, we're on. I did unplug and left it on the battery, and as you can see down there, as we've been recording this review, how fast the battery life has drained, and that's kind of telling and kind of part of that setback where we haven't been on the battery very long here, and the display has been off in different spurts throughout recording this review here, and we're already down to 30% on the battery, and as you saw, we really didn't do much. We really didn't do anything here within this review that would actually tax this battery down. So imagine what happens when you are trying to work on a full detailed piece. That's one of the setbacks, and that's one of the setbacks of the product, and that's what pulls away the mobile part out of the mobile studio. Now this is what I originally didn't have any plans to get it, but then I said, you know what, I had to test it for myself to see if I could pull off what I wanted with it, because a lot of other things were lining up, and of course I've Wacom's pen technology is one of the best out there. But unfortunately for me, the battery life thing is the battery life thing is a major setback for me, in the way that I wanted to use this device. As I am starting to get ready to move to my new studio and new place and set up my new studio, and I will be doing a lot more traveling with that move and my client base where I currently am, and having multiple locations open. So my traveling will be increasing, and with battery life like this, it's just not going to work out for me there on that front as well. So what's the conclusion we can draw here? What have we learned? How can we break this down? Well, this one stumped me a bit, so this one was a little bit harder, but I think I got it. We're going to break it down in two ways. One is, if you are looking for an ultra portable system, an ultra portable art tool that you can pick up and go with, that's great for traveling with, great for meeting your clients with, something that's by you, most of the time, that's with you, this is not going to be the tool for you. This is not the one for you. And you have to consider everything that we have out there in 2017. We have a lot of great tools out there today, like the Surface, now with 13 hours of battery life and its new pen with tilt, like the Galaxy Book with its pen and the OLED display, 100% Adobe RGB. Of course, both of those having Wacom's technology built in. And then, of course, you have to consider the iPad Pro and Apple Pencil, the 9.7 soon-to-be 10-inch, the 12-inch, all the improvements that are coming for the new iPad Pro and the next generation Apple Pencil. And then you have to think about how working in those environments are, and they're really good on everything I just mentioned. They're really good and fast. and very fluid, and especially in the case of the iPad Pro. So you have to, those are things that I would say you have to consider. But then there's the other side of the spectrum, and that side of the spectrum is if you don't plan on taking this out of your studio much, if you want to use the Wacom link and turn this into a Cintiq, so maybe you would split the ratio up where you use it more like a Cintiq and hook it to a much more powerful system, and then maybe 30%, 20% of the time use it as the system it is here, maybe on your couch for light travel, very light use when out and about if you wanted to take it with you. If you think about it in that way, then it could work out for you. But you know, if you're thinking about trying to make this your daily driver, if you're thinking about that this is going to be something that comes with you, that's not going to work out, because you're not going to get through a day of battery life. You're not even going to get, you probably won't get through half a day of battery life. So, you know, that's an issue, and these are the things you have to consider. But if you are going to keep this in your place, I would say you might as well get this over the Cintiq Pro 13, because then you still get a computer built in, and you could be free of the wall adapter for some time when you have this plugged in as a Cintiq. So, and you know, that adds a uniqueness, that adds a longevity to it. Now, of course, and we have a lot of positivity here, a lot of great features, the pen, the 8,000 pressure levels, the express keys, all those things that make Wacom what they are, they're all present here. So there are a lot of benefits of the Mobile Studio Pro. Now, you know, it's not completely there, in my opinion. I do think they are learning, and they're getting better at making this all-in-one system, and I think it will be there one day. Very good, much better than the Cintiq Companion, and you know, a lot of benefits, a lot of positives. So guys, thank you guys for tuning in today. I hope I covered as much as I could for you. I hope you learned something from this. If you know someone who's interested in this product, please share it with your friends so they can know. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe and all that good stuff. Guys, we have a lot more coming, so please stay tuned. More reviews, more content. Stay well.